they don't even live on the earth. So these creatures, I would categorize them as supernatural. Supernatural is mostly fantasy. Young men would just get up in the middle of the night, walk out of their house, and they would cross the highway, go to a particular banyan tree which was there in the jungle. I mean, in the jungle side, and they would hang themselves to death. In the morning, their dead bodies would be found hanging from the tree, right from floor to ceiling. That was very slender, like a tall man, right? And then I tried to look at it again. It was gone, but if you ask me, I'll tell it was there, and it was trying to watch. And I was writing an exorcism scene.
This is an interesting episode, and more so ironic that I am the one talking about horror on my own podcast. Our guest today, Neil De Silva, is a renowned author of horror and dark stories. And in this podcast, he shares his experiences while researching for his books and while working with other paranormal investigators. In this podcast, we spoke about ghosts, spirits, the astral world or the parallel world that exists. Enjoy this special episode with Neil De Silva on the iRonik show. Mr. Neil De Silva, sir, welcome to the iRonik show. It will make more sense that we should say we will get spooked out in the show.
Thanks, Ronik, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure, and I hope everything goes all right because we are going to talk horror. And when I talk horror on podcasts or wherever something or the other goes wrong, there is a technical issue or something. So let's see if everything goes well today or something happens. We don't know.
I hope the good spirits are with us.
Good spirits are always with us. We just need to get in touch with them.
Yes. Yes, sir. So, Neil, my first question to you, why horror as a genre? Were there any childhood experiences that you had, probably any fears, any phobias that probably got you into the horror genre?
Ronik, the thing is, I believe when you write, it's the story that comes to you first. You don't start thinking that, okay, I want to become a romance author or I want to become a comedy author or I want to become a horror author. So when I wanted to start writing, it had always been my dream to write a book. And I finally accomplished that in 2015 when I wrote my first book, that was Maya's Last Life. Now, when I wrote the book, I never gave it a thought as to what genre this book is going to be about. I just had a great story which I wanted to tell. I had my characters, I had my plot, and I wrote the story. Now, the thing is, the story as I wrote, my writing style, I discovered my writing style as I wrote. Because, without writing, you don't know what is your own style. Some people have a nice, pleasant style of writing. Some people have a preaching style of writing. Some people write light-hearted stuff. My writing was going in the darker territories. And as I was writing more and more chapters and scenes of Maya's New Husband, it was getting more and more bizarre, more and more weird. And that was when I thought, or I realized this thing about myself, that I write dark stuff. I can write this very well because I was happy with the way I wrote it. And that's how I started out writing horror. My first book became horror. Going a little back, like how these influences might have come. Maybe it was because I grew up in the 80s. I was a child at that time growing up. The house was big. I mean, big by those standards. Because old houses are generally, like big kind of houses. I grew up in Mumbai. And I have a brother, but he was 6 years younger to me. So, because of that, he was hardly at home. He was in school when I was at home. That kind of thing. So, I spent most of my childhood alone. Also, my dad had this huge collection of books in the house. And he had books of all genres. He was a big time reader. So he had books of all genres, and what attracted me, even as a child, was the darker section of books that he had in his bookshelf. So he had all the books of Dracula, Frankenstein, Man in the Iron Mask, all those kinds of stories, which I read growing up, the gothic fiction, which we call as. So I read those stories and I was quite enchanted by those dark stuff. Also Ruskin Bond, I should mention the stories of Ruskin Bond as well, plus many other Indian authors that he had in his collection at that time. We know that there are very few Indian authors that write horror, but I read and I grew up on that. And one more influence, a very strong influence, was that again, this comes from my father. He was a subtitlist of movies. He used to subtitle movies from Hindi to English for the
Okay.
overseas market. So all the big time movies of the 80s and 90s, including the huge titles like Maine Pyar Kiya, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, Saudagar and all that,
Oh.
they were translated in my house. And my dad used to do it. He used to type on a typewriter, old Remington typewriter. He would write the Hindi dialogue on one side and the English dialogue on the other side. And I used to sit next to him and watch, like how he did it, magical. Right. So I was in 7th standard when I started helping him out, and the first movie that I helped him out with was Shahenshah. So I translated a lot of Shahenshah, Amitabh Bachchan's movie, from Hindi to English when I was just in the 7th standard. Also, my dad's biggest clients at that time, apart from all the Yash Chopra, Suved Bhaijatiya and all that he had, his biggest clients were also the Ramsays. So every Ramsay movie came in our house for translation. Whether it was Veerana, Purana Mandir, Dak Bangla, all those titles, they came to our house. And Dad used to translate them. I used to sit next to him, watch, and we used to get those scripts. So I think that is where all the excitement of horror came. So I was never censored at home that you should not read this or this movie is not for you. This is too dark for you. Never that happened, and I don't think I turned out quite wrong because of that.
So I will tell you about. So I have been a Fattu kid since since I can remember. So it has, and still till today, I get petrified in the dark. I'm really scared. But still, somehow this genre of horror and the dark, intrigues me. And probably it's not only me; it's many other people who are scared of it, but still have a really what do you call it? They get that rush from these stories or these movies or these particular experiences. Any phobias or fears that you had, or that any phobias that continue till date?
Lots of them, and I was also a very fattu child. I'll tell you that. I know this is the iRonik show, so this is the biggest irony that I'm telling you probably
Right.
in this episode. So the thing is, I was scared of everything and anything because when you are growing up like that, an alone child almost in the big
Mhm.
house, so your mind starts imagining things. And
Right.
because I was a big time reader, also, so many fancies in my mind used to play on all the time. So I had this. Of course, I feared all the common things that every child fears. I feared the dark. I feared being lonely at home, especially in the evening times. If I was left alone, I would be scared. I would just sit at the window, balcony window, and see the people down because I was too scared to even go inside the house. It was, things would play on in my mind. I was scared of cockroaches, lizards, not spiders. I was never scared of spiders. I was very scared of death. Like when anybody would die in the building.
Hmm.
I to this date, I do not attend funerals. I don't go to when people are, I try to avoid going on the day that person is dead and they are carrying away the body and all that. I don't do that. I may go later and pay my respects, but to the family. But I don't go. I don't see dead bodies. It's a big time phobia that I have right from my childhood. I was even scared of my father's dead body when he passed in 2011, 1st January. So when that happened, I was quite scared to when his body was to come home in the coffin. So it was a very difficult time for me. But anyway, I went through that. I conquered that fear of mine, and of course, he was my father. So it's not that there's a kind of attachment as well.
Mhm.
So this is a fear that I still have, which I explored in my books. I constantly keep on exploring this fear of death that I have. I'm not afraid of ghosts. I don't know why that is. That's a very strange thing, probably. I'm not afraid of afterlife. I'm not afraid of ghosts, spirits, dark energies. And I have experienced a few, but those don't scare me. But it's the climax of the human life that scares me, the death.
Mhm.
So, and I don't know where it got ingrained in my system, but it stays to this day. And I'm actually, it's a kind of a blessing for me that I have these phobias because I'm a horror writer. So as a horror author, my job is to scare people. My job is to explore fear, to explore the psychology of fear. Why are we scared of certain things? Now, if I was not a Fattu child, and if I had no understanding of fear, I could not have done that in my book so well. So, being a child with so many phobias has actually helped me because now I know exactly how you get the goosebumps, the physicality of it. Now I know how
Mhm.
the cold sweat starts getting gathered in different, on your body when you are afraid. How your throat becomes scratchy, itchy, and so dry. When you get frightened, that's one thing that happens. You get a very
Mhm.
steely feeling at the back of your throat. It's as if you have swallowed a metal bolt or something like that. You get that
Right.
feeling, and it becomes very dry. You get dehydrated. Fear makes you dehydrated because the thing is that your energies are sucked out of you. So, because one of the things that will happen to you when you are afraid is that you sweat a lot, and that's why you feel the water content of your body reducing. So that's these are all the biological parts of it. All these things I understand because I myself underwent all these symptoms of fear, as we say. If you remember your class 10, class 12 biology, there was this whole
Hmm.
study about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. That is how it works for us. The sympathetic nervous system tells you that, okay, this is the stimulus of fear, and this is how your body should react. And that is why we go to that extreme state. The parasympathetic nervous system is what brings you back. I have experienced this multiple times in my life, especially when there was a particular death in the house, not in the house, but in the building. So he was a young guy, around 31 at that time, and he had gone. This was back in the 80s, late 80s. I was a small child at that time. So he had gone on a trip with his friends, and at Khandala Ghat, their bus overturned. It went right into the valley, and there were all boys in that bus. All, I mean, 31 years old, not boys exactly, men, young men. All of them died. All of them died, and this guy's body was brought home to his house. He was one of our neighbors, and he used to come to our house often to talk to us, and he was like a family friend. When he died, I was very, very scared because the neighbors started talking कि बॉडी पूरी ये हो गई है, क्रैश हो गया है, उसका फेस दिख नहीं रहा, और बर्फ पे लिटाया है, सब जगह मतलब वो स्मेल आ रहा है एंड ऑल दैट. So all those things, as the neighbors spoke more and more about it, I started feeling more and more chills.
Hits
That
on your head.
it was very, very tough. Then my mother understood. That was the first time my mother understood that I was scared of all these kinds of talks. In the 90s and 80s, people were not so careful like they are now. They used to talk in front of children and anything,
Right.
leaders especially. So then she understood, and then she started, like moderating it a little bit.
Mhm.
Then she did some prayers and all that, and my fear started to dissipate. After becoming an adult, my fear I actually conquered by writing my books. So,
Okay.
because I write horror books. So what I'm actually doing is I am pushing myself to the very extreme. I'm actually writing the goriest stuff because I want to see whether I can do it or not.
Hmm.
So yes, my catharsis is happening. My conquering of fear part is happening.
So I'm still trying to conquer my fear. I remember pretty clearly. I think it was late 90s, early 2000s. There were a couple of TV shows at that point of time. There was no OTT, obviously. Uh, One was Ahat. I think it was on Sony,
Yeah.
and then there was another
Z horror
Z
show.
horror show. Z horror show. I really liked those shows, but after that, you know, I would like मतलब अकेले तो नहीं से नहीं सो सकता था. I would be someone would be there. I would be, if it is mid May, June, whatever, I would be putting on at least a bed sheet so that my legs are covered. I would be sweating all, but still need that protection of something that I need to protect my feet basically.
I'll tell you that shows and movies, they don't scare me at all. Because
Okay.
see, I come from a kind of a filmy background, not really from, because my dad was a subtitlist and all that. So I have seen film shoots. I have seen, bachpan se I have seen all these kinds of things. So I know that how they actually put on the makeup and stuff and all. So anything you show me, I will go and watch in a theater alone also, which I have done with a lot of movies. In fact, recently, not very recently, but Tumbad I had watched alone. I watched it when the movie was just going out of theatres. I mean, its run was in Goa, and when I booked my ticket, there were only about 3 or 4 people in the whole theatre, and I was sitting in the darkness and watching Tumbad, and aram se I enjoyed the movie. I did not get scared at all. But one thing that I try not to watch is gore. Like where people are cutting each other. There's a lot of
Right.
blood and that, because that
Like
disgusts me.
of those series of Saw and all that.
Yeah. Saw and the Hostel series,
Hostels.
all
Right.
those
Right.
kinds of things. I watch them, but because it's of course my area, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't really enjoy watching them. I just feels me a bit
Right.
disgusting.
So while speaking of the movies, I three of us used to live in one house. Right. I was alone that day, and that movie had come. If I can recall it, 1920.
Yeah.
There was this movie 1920.
Yeah.
So I
Vikram.
thought of watching it alone. I don't know why and how, but I thought कि नहीं देखते हैं यार एक बार फिर से देखते हैं. वो मैंने चलाया. I watched the whole movie, and the funniest part वो क्या हुआ कि my friend came in. I opened the door. तो कर क्या रहे हो तुम? मैंने बोला मैं मूवी देख रहा हूँ 1920. बोलता भूत आहा मूवी तुम्हें देखनी है. एंड माई ही हैज जस्ट कम फ्रॉम वैष्णव देवी. तो वो माता रानी का जो वो रहता है ना वो सर पे
Yes.
बांधने वाला. So that was there. I was putting it on my head and was watching 1920.
That must have
बोलते
been.
तुम्हें देखने की जरूरत क्या है जब तुम्हारा यह हाल है तो. मैं नहीं यार मन
That's
कर रहा
fun.
था. Okay.
Horror is entertaining. Now,
Right. Right.
we say that there is no market for horror in India, but I'll tell you, we Indians are big time horror lovers. There is
Exactly.
such a huge market. Now, I write books, so I know, right? My books, like,
Hmm.
since
Hmm.
8 years now, they are still in Amazon top 100
Hmm.
lists because they are horror and people just want to read horror. Good horror, I mean. Otherwise, they won't
Exactly.
pay. So, see, even when we were children, right, we have heard such a lot of ghost stories, whether apne building mein or from a friend.
Hmm.
Somebody or the
Hmm.
other would always share experiences of bhoot, wraith, and all that. Um, in my case, even my grandmother used to tell me horror stories because that was very common in my house. That kind of boogeyman stories. If you do
Hmm.
anything bad, then a bad man will come and take you away.
Right. Right.
So all these stories we have anyway grown up with. So it is somewhere there, a part of our culture. Horror has always been there, even in our epics, in the books that we have read from our childhood till today. The stories of Amay Chitrakatha, also the mythology
Hmm.
stories. There were so many Danavs and Asurs and all these things because our creatures, they come from a mythology only.
Right.
Whether it is the Yakshini, Pishach, whoever we talk about, Betal. We are the ones who have actually a Vikram Betal series where a Betal is one of the main characters. Betal is a ghoul, a flesh-eating spirit, right? So we have these kinds of stories right from bachpan se we are reading, from our childhood we are reading. So horror is not gone in any way. We love horror.
Right.
Only thing, we are a little bit scared to face it, and maybe a little bit we feel that it's a kind of a taboo to admit it openly that I love
Hmm.
horror.
Hmm. All right. So coming back to your books, Neil, you started with Maya's New Husband, right? I
Yeah.
think that was your first book, and then you probably picked up the genre as such, the horror genre. Your books like Yakshini, then Spirits Talk to Me, right behind you, and you have co-authored a couple of books.
Yes.
Okay,
I have
so one
co-authored
was with.
Haunted and The
Hmm,
Spirits
hmm,
of Living. So they are co-authored with paranormal investigators. So in Haunted is co-authored with Jaya Lai. So he's a famous paranormal researcher.
hmm, hmm,
He has explored many, I think, 500, 600 cases now, all
okay.
over India, plus even abroad. So he has gone hunting for ghosts and all, and he tries to get to the crux of the matter. So that is his 10 stories in places like Kuldara, Bhangad, Mayong, where all he had visited, Lambidehar mines, and what all he experienced there, that is in the book Haunted. And the Spirits Talk to Me is with Sarvajit Mohanty. So he's also another very famous paranormal researcher. So his are true cases of people who had hauntings in their houses, factories, etc., etc. So it's almost like a CID like thing. You
Hmm, hmm,
go detective hunting, see what's actually happening. It's very much like the Conjuring movies that you might have watched, where the warden actually put on the
yeah,
cameras
yeah.
and all in the house. So that is how Sarvajit Mohanty works and his team. And so I co-authored these two books. I have more co-authored books coming out with these two paranormal investigators. But I write both. I write this kind of stuff plus I write
Hmm, hmm, hmm.
fiction. like Yakshini and Maya's New Husband. Yakshini is a big hit. Even now, it's like within the top 1500 books of all time on Kindle. So that's a.
Wow.
I'm talking of all genres, not just horror. So Yakshini has really hit the roof.
Right. Okay. So while probably you are writing these books, right? There was a lot of research that might have gone in these books. You might have started writing out of your choice that let's see what goes in. Then once that genre kicked in, there must have been some sort of research and all that. So while you are writing these books, or while you are probably researching for on the topic, so did you feel anything paranormal, for lack of word, or did you feel creeped out?
Many times. And this started from my first book itself. I was writing Maya's New Husband, I remember, way back in 2014. And it was November, the month
Hmm.
when I was writing. So the cold season had just begun. And I was writing Maya's New Husband in this same room, in this same spot, in fact. And I was writing very scary scenes of the final revelation. It has Maya's New Husband is all about Aghoris. So I had done a lot of research on Aghoris, and I had watched a lot of documentaries on them, spoken to people. So a lot of research had already been,
Hmm.
done. I had also read a lot of books about Aghoris. And then I was writing this final few chapters where everything comes to a culmination. And it was so intense, I tell you. It was so intense. Like I could not write, with that kind of, it's very different when you write horror. You feel that something is being pulled out of you, physically. So what actually happened one night when I was writing was that I actually felt like some presence is watching and I'm writing that. It was so, so, so intense that I could not continue writing that night. And I used to write in the, after midnight when everybody would sleep in the house. So that didn't, that kind of episodes I had a lot. Coming down, when I wrote these books with Sarbajit, especially the spirits talk
Hmm.
to me. I'll tell you some very strange things have happened when I was writing the spirits talk to me. So, firstly, how it worked was I met Sarbajit at a kind of a meetup. It was a paranormal meetup, and he was speaking, and I had actually bought a ticket to be an audience and to see how this guy works. If I like it, then I will approach him to become a collaborator on my book. That kind of thing. So I was sitting in the audience and I was just watching. And this guy had so much knowledge of the paranormal. I was just impressed. We also did a seance at that time. A Ouija board was brought, and in the Ouija board, actually, we sat around it and we tried to see whether anything happens. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. But I can tell you the energy of that place itself was so scary, so creepy. I told Sarvajit after that okay, I'm writing. I want to write a book with you. And he was completely on board right from the first instant itself. And what he did was he started sending me stories on audio. So this is the way
Okay.
we worked. His stories on WhatsApp, he would just record the audio and send it to me. Then what I would do is in my room, I would shut all the lights, every sound, and pull the curtains, everything, make it complete darkness, and just play the audio and listen. Transport myself in that place. So the first story that he sent me, pretty scary, was the story of a tree in Bhuvaneshwar. In Bhuvaneshwar, there was a small village, a little 200 kilometers away from Bhuvaneshwar, where there was this very strange case happening. Young men would just get up in the middle of the night, walk out of their house, and they would cross the highway, go to a particular banyan tree which was there in the jungle. I mean, in the jungle side, and they would hang themselves from it. In the morning, their dead bodies would be found hanging from the tree. This happened to about a dozen young men in that village. And when that happened, of course, there was no explanation whatsoever. If it is suicide, why will so many men go and do? And these are hale and hearty men who have everything going for them in their lives. So then Sarvajit had investigated this case and he gave me a blow by blow account of exactly what happened. So when he actually went to the tree, he and his team, the energies that were there in the tree, they started playing out. And bizarre things happened. And they were also caught in that trap and all that. So that's what is in the book. So I'll not go into that. But when he sent me that audio, I was so freaked out. I was really like feeling like, okay, something is there. And I told Sarvajit that I definitely want to write this. And then I wrote and it all started moving. Now, what happened is our collaboration became so strong that once he's one more of the stories later on, he sent me the audio. I wrote it. The audio was about somebody, a kind of a serial killer who had killed a lot of people, right? So he sent me the audio clip. Then I wrote the story and I sent it back to him for his approval. Okay, everything is okay or not. He read it and immediately he called me. He said, Neelbhai, how can you write this? I mean, how have you written that the car was a red SUV? I did not tell you this in the audio clip. And he told me that, how did you write that the man actually beheaded his victims? I did not tell you that. I told Sarvajit, it's just like, when you send me your audio clips, I close my eyes and I try to transport myself to the place and I try to visualize it and write it so that it becomes as authentic as possible. Sarvajit told me, you have, I don't know, is this some psychic power? Because you have actually seen it as it happened and I did not give you the gory details of all that cutting and all that, chopping down, because I did not want to make the book too dark. But you have actually written that stuff which happened without me telling you. So, these kinds of things, we have no explanation for this. This has happened on several occasions in many of the stories of Spirit Storm. Sarvajit just told me the audio clips and the way I wrote it, it was actually like how the censored stuff came out. So this keeps happening.
Okay. And so while you are speaking about Sarvajit and the way they investigated that whole area around the tree, so how does that happen? I mean, how do they carry out those investigations? Is there any powers that probably they have generated over the years because they have been working into that genre? Or, I mean, is there any instrument, K2 EMF meters that I know?
Yes, there are those devices. Yes, of course, there is the EMF meter which will record the electromagnetic frequency of a place. There were infrared sensors, there are thermometers that I use, there are many things that I use. But let us talk from the human perspective, because equipment is a different thing. Now, why, an ordinary person, even if he goes with the EMF meter and all, I think probably they will not find anything. All these spirits are only, felt by some people. And, there is a kind of energy at work here, which has a coordination only with some people. Not everybody can feel this presence. Okay, so why this happens is there is something which I believe is a mind to mind connection. Like we are all energies, right? We all believe that we have an aura, we have an energy that we permeate around us. Surroundings are, we are actually in a bubble of our own energy. We are moving around. Now, this energy, my energy, interacts with the energy of another person, right? And that is the time before we meet. Also, our energies will meet first. And that is where you know that this is a good vibe or a bad vibe. Sometimes you meet somebody, immediately you come to know that this is a good guy. Or immediately you go to somebody's house and you say that, okay, this is a welcoming place, I like it. Some houses you go, you say that, oh, I hate this place, I want to go out of here as soon as possible. So, this happens because of the energies that we have. Now, in certain people, these energies are more pronounced, much more stronger. Like in Sarvajit and Pooja, I have definitely seen that. More in Pooja. Pooja is actually a psychic. So Pooja, what she can do is she can even touch something like this Chashmeka case of mine, even if I'm not here, and she can tell about the person that owned it. Because when we own things, like I own my cell phone or I own anything, we impart some of our energies within those devices also. Even to the furniture that is in our house. That's what paranormal researchers talk about a lot. And that's why maybe houses get haunted. So I will also tell you, there's a big disclaimer that I do not 100% believe in all this stuff, of course. Because I come from a science background. So I need my formulas, I need my proofs, I need my theorems and all. And science does not approve of the paranormal world yet because there is no evidence, there is no proof. So whatever I am telling you has come from talking to a lot of people who have experienced such things, and these are the kinds of things that are spoken about, that things possess energies, and this is what some of us are more attuned to, some of us are less. It is just like sadhus. Now, we all believe that sadhus have a better sense of the world, of the universe. There are sadhus who are trikaldarshi also. They can see the past, present, and future at the same time, which we cannot. They can see different dimensions, which we cannot. Okay, and though I will say there is, I will not use the word proof, but we know that such things are recorded, are spoken about, right? I'll not use the word proof because then it makes it science, which is not
Right.
really the case right now. So when we have this kind of feeling that holy people can do it, when holy people can find out things and they can be clairvoyant, they can be like omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, right? Then in ordinary people also these senses can be sometimes pronounced, and that is what yeah, some paranormal investigators have that we lack.
So what what I believe, also believe that, what do you call that? The
Yeah,
word that you used. We have this sense of identifying that there is something which is not normal. Let's not call it paranormal as of now, which is
yeah,
not normal, which is
yeah,
beyond probably our belief or our senses.
correct.
But then that you spoke about Pooja, then there are people like her who have probably their senses are heightened because they have been working in that area. They're now they can sense things that a normal human being cannot.
Yes. So
So
this is a
just
lot of of course this comes from the psychic sense. It's
huh.
we all know about our five senses. That is what we have been taught in school. But
Hmm.
there are definitely senses beyond that. Because otherwise, how can you explain deja vu? Now, all
Right.
of us have experienced this thing called as a deja vu. I have definitely on many occasions. I sometimes just, I'm in the middle of a conversation and I feel like, "Abey, I have done this conversation before. I have spoken about the same things. This person also, I know I've met him before, but I cannot place where that person I have met. Now, this is a sense of deja vu. What now paranormal experts will say, like somebody like Sarvajit or somebody might say, is that we exist in multiple realities at the same time. So this world that we are living in, this right now what is happening is very linear. From birth to death, we are going to go scene by scene, like in a web series, right? But it's not really like that. So we might be existing in different planes at the same time, and sometimes the matrix glitches. So sometimes you get a look see into the other world, and that is where those deja vu happens. That is where dreams happen, because some of our
Right.
dreams are completely beyond any explanation. Many of them come from our day-to-day experiences, our fears, and all that. But most of the dreams, at least my dreams, they are so out of the world, so wacky, and I can't explain where they come from.
So the concept maybe that you're talking about is a sort of multiverse.
Yes, I am talking about that. But if we go in that area, there will be no end to this discussion.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So now talking about what exactly you just mentioned about Purans and all, that there is a world which is so for us, as you mentioned, that we are living in a bubble. So there is also a world which is not in our reach, which is beyond us, which we cannot see, but probably they can see us, and they know when we are talking about them, we are trying to find out about them,
Yes,
and probably then they also try to reach us.
yes.
So do you believe in that there is a parallel world or a universe existing, and there is sometimes there is a conflict when we जो आपने अभी फीलिंग बोला एक डेजा वू का, वो तो चलो मल्टीवर्स का कॉन्सेप्ट हो गया, देन वी फील कि कुछ है बट वी कैन नॉट सी इट व्हाट इट इज समवेयर you entered a room, right, or any other area, suddenly you'll feel a chill. Why is that? That does not happen in every corner of the room.
Now, this could be because of the vibe that you have from the place is telling you that something is wrong here. Because our body is sometimes hypersensitive and we don't realize it. As I told you that we have senses that we haven't explored yet, just because
Right.
science has no concrete proof of it. So therefore, the whole world does not accept it yet. But we have seen these senses, the same kinds of senses in dogs also. In dogs, we see it in a very high amount. Why do we keep dogs? Because dogs as pets, I mean. Because when they are kept for lonely people and all, dogs are the ones who will sense a danger first, right? So these animals, they have a very heightened sense beyond ours. I'm not talking about the basic five senses, but I'm talking about the other senses, the ESP, extra sensory perception that we talk about. So that is probably something that is developed in some of us also without our knowledge, like how developed it is. But sometimes there were those rare instances when you can sense them. Like I'll tell you about me. I am not a psychic. Okay, though Sarvaji tells me and even Pooja tells me sometimes that I have a very big psychic ability in me, mostly because of that book connection, that stories that I wrote. But I don't believe I can actually touch somebody's glass and tell you that whose glass it is. I cannot do that kind of stuff. But then, I'll tell you this. Certain things have happened. Like I was, when I write my horror stories, I have a habit. I try to go to another place, another city, another town. I book a hotel room. I stay there and I lock myself in and I write for 7 days, 10 days. I only come out for food. So that is the kind of one habit that I've created, a kind of a writing retreat, solo writing retreat. Now, when I am alone like this and I am writing the horror stories, many times, multiple times, have I experienced certain things in the room with. Like, you get this feeling. I was writing an exorcism scene once, and I got the feeling as if somebody is watching me from over my shoulder. Many times I had to look back. There was nothing. My peripheral vision told me something is there. That kind of feeling has happened a lot. Once I actually, I don't remember exactly whether it was Panvel or Goa or somewhere I had gone. I had booked a place and all that, and I actually saw a tall figure standing by the wardrobe, by that attached, right from floor to ceiling. That figure was very slender, like a tall man, right? And then I tried to look at it again. It was gone, but if you ask me, I'll tell it was there, and it was trying to watch. And I was writing an exorcism scene, a scene which has this mantras and all that, tantra mantra and all that build was there in that scene. What I believe, I asked my paranormal investigator friends afterwards, why is this happening to me? And it's not like it's happening, it's a one-off thing. Lights start flickering. I have even shared videos on Instagram on that. So in many hotel rooms where I write, there is no problem before I enter. While I am there, the lights start fluttering, and in a very, very, very strange manner. Means it's not that odd electricity malfunction. It's some fluctuation that you cannot explain. Right. So anyway, I asked my friends, why is this happening? And then they gave me an explanation for it. This was also what I read. The explanation is that there are energies all around us, both positive and negative. And as you said, they cannot interact with the human world in the normal circumstances. They cannot, because our world is different from theirs. We are in a different dimension from them, so they cannot understand it. However, when you are trying to write such horror stories, you are actually invoking them, you are provoking them, you are trespassing into their territory, and they come to know that you are writing about it. Because what you are basically doing is you are thinking about those scenes. It's not just a material word coming on paper, your mind is working. So when you're thinking about those horror scenes, like how this paranormal ghost is going to haunt, you are affecting the aura around you. And this is what can be sensed by the other world out there. And that is where these interactions start happening. They won't harm you. Nobody dies because of a ghost. Ghosts cannot kill. That only happens in Hindi movies. Ghosts cannot kill you. But you may die because of the fear that it generates in you. So that is the reason ghosts do not have that much energy that they can even lift this glass off my table. They cannot do that. Right? They will never materialize in a full form of a beautiful, sexy woman. That also won't happen. But you will probably see some glitch somewhere, something trying to manifest, some wispy smoke-like thing. Like this is the basic appearance that will happen. But this can only happen when you are trying to get into that world. So a warning to people like who get scared very easily. Number one, don't be so scared, because ghosts are not all bad. There are many spirits who are actually just stuck. They are just like, if you believe in spirits, that is. Okay, that is the first disclaimer I have to put. And the second thing is, it is not even if you believe in spirits and even if there is a haunting, like many people on Instagram and all, they message me that there is a haunting in my house. What can I do? So my blanket suggestion to all of them is, it's definitely mostly not going to harm you. It's your own fear psychosis that will harm you. Right? So first get over that. first get over the fear. What do paranormal investigators also do? They are not superhumans that they can do something, like they cannot just zap the ghost out of the place.
Mm-hmm.
What they do is they stand their ground and they tell that spirit that, okay, your time is up. You have to find your deliverance. This is the white door. You have to walk into the white door. And the moment you do that, you will find your salvation. You will go to the other side. Now there is no white door. It's a metaphor. You get it?
Mm-hmm.
It's all a metaphor. This is maybe there is no spirit also. There's nothing. It's all, like just in the hawa mein. Right? But what this is doing is to the person, to the human being, it is giving this kind of a placebo effect that everything is resolved. My surroundings are now clean, cleansed, as they say. Right? So this is what happens. So this is how I have gone through experiences. But then I love those experiences in the moment. Because I want that thrill. I want that fear. I want those goosebumps because then only I can write good stories. So I actually go in search of fear when I want to write my horror stories. But the moment I am out of it, I try to completely purge myself of everything. If you follow me on Instagram, you probably know that I'm a runner. I run. I'm an athlete. I run every morning. Why do I do that? It is because I need that balance in my life. The negativity that I surround myself with when I'm writing horror, and the rest of the day I'm talking about ghosts and all. In the morning I go, and when the sun is rising, in that positiveness I run. I'm just cleansing myself. Now this can be also just a psychological thing, telling me that okay, you are cleansed now from your last night's ghostly talks. But it helps big time.
So let's talking about, you mentioned about the different kind of energies and the life forms. You mentioned about Yakshini, you mentioned about Betal and all that. So for the listeners, can you please let us know what are the kind of this, in your opinion? I mean, there is the proof or something of that, but what are the kind of energies that we have, or the different names that we can relate to?
Okay, so this is actually putting me in the spot because I write horror, but I'll tell you there is a distinction between supernatural and paranormal. So when we talk about this, I'll have to tell you first, and then I'll give you my response, answer to this. See, the paranormal, when we talk about, paranormal is just a little away from the norm. What is paranormal defined as? Paranormal is defined as those occurrences that they occur. See, occurrences, so they actually happen, but they do not have any scientific explanation. So these are the things that are called as paranormal. So paranormal is not abnormal. Paranormal is just happening, but we don't know why it is happening. So who comes in the paranormal? What is this category? Paranormal has ghosts, spirits, right? So paranormal is mostly about human beings like you and I who have died and have come back into this world for some reason. So paranormal is that. Paranormal includes aliens because aliens are there. We know that aliens are there, but we still don't have scientific proof of them, and we don't, except US might have, NASA might have. We don't have, right? Paranormal is also things like rebirth, reincarnation. We all have heard stories about people remembering their past life. So reincarnation is not something that is not happening. It is happening, but we don't have a scientific explanation for it. So that will also come in paranormal. Right? So paranormal is all this. Paranormal is the monsters under the sea, the creatures in the air that we don't know yet, the yetis in the forest, in the mountains, because we don't yet know whether yetis exist or not, but we are not telling that they don't exist categorically. We are still telling that they might exist. So they are still in paranormal territory. What is now supernatural? Supernatural is fantasy. So that is fantasy. So in supernatural, we have all these demons and yakshas, yakshis, pishach and all these things. Even the Betal and all. That all will come mostly in the supernatural territory. Betal is a grey area because Betal can come in paranormal also. Because Betal is after all a human man who has died. So Betal will come in a grey area. But Yakshini is not a human. Yakshini is a demigod. So they are a completely different race who come, they don't even live on the earth. So these creatures, I would categorize them as supernatural. Supernatural is mostly fantasy. We have zero proof that they exist. At least for paranormal, we are halfway there. We have some observations, if not a conclusion. But in supernatural, we don't have anything except the stories written by people thousands of years ago, which is also, it could have been just a story, we don't know. So the thing is, this is the distinction. Now, you asked me the question what I believe in and what are these energies. So I believe that the energies that may be there in this world, are there in this world, are the paranormal ones. The paranormal, whatever I explained, they are there. Only thing is, we have not explored them. I do not believe that death is the end of it. It cannot be just you were born one day and you are dead one day. What happens to the soul then? What happens to our consciousness? Why are we attaining all this knowledge, wisdom, listening to this podcast, trying to expand our horizons? Why are we doing all that if we are just going to die one day and everything is going to go in the wind? We are doing it because there is an ultimate purpose, and we don't know that ultimate purpose yet. We don't know where we are heading. We don't know where we land in this big scheme of things. But I don't believe in the supernatural. I don't believe in the fantasy creatures, in the monsters. So I don't believe they exist. I just believe somebody wrote a very good story about them. Whether they are even the Western creatures like the vampires, werewolves, I don't believe that they exist. They make very good stories, and I also write the stories. But whether they exist or not, no, that's my fantasy.
So when you're talking about paranormal, and reincarnation, so I recently did a podcast with one of the past life regression therapists,
Yeah.
Mrs. Kaushalya Suresh. It was a couple of weeks back that episode released. So actually, we touched upon these points, some unnatural causes.
Hmm.
So she actually explained there was a story of that one girl that she mentioned to me, that there was this young girl about 21 years of age. She was terrified of riding bicycle, while her sister, who was like I don't know, maybe 7 years younger than her, she used to ride that. So they did a past life regression or regression on that particular lady, and they found out that in their last life she was riding a particular bicycle and she was hit on her head by something very heavy while she was riding, and
Correct.
that led to, in this life, that led to her fear of riding bicycle, and there was this constant headache that she had.
That is because she was hit
And
on the
after
leg.
that regression therapy, she came to track, and now she is all okay and all
No,
that.
even birthmarks, birthmarks that you
Yeah,
have on your
yeah,
body. It's believed that they are the marks of the injuries because of which you died in your previous birth. So, if you have a birthmark on your back, it might just mean that somebody stabbed you in the back in your past life. So, and if somebody stabbed you in the back, that means you died a bad death because of being betrayed or deceived or something like that. So in this birth you will be grumpy. By nature you will be bad tempered. And people who had natural deaths, I mean from old age and all, they are more compassionate, kind hearted and all. So these are theories. I don't know whether we should like put a lot of stock
exactly.
into it. But this is something. But one thing I believe in is, like I told you, you know, see, I believe in soul. I'm a Christian. Christians usually do not believe in rebirth. But I do believe that we have a soul, right? So there's a soul that is much more superior to us, to our human body, which is also the Hindu belief. It is very much the Hindu belief, in fact. And you know what happens? Our soul is what is going to live on for a long, long time. Our soul has a long existence, very long existence. And the existence that we have in flesh and blood, this form, this is so small, this is infinitesimal. So we are going to spend a very small time in flesh form, but we are going to spend a lot of time in energy form, which is soul. So keeping that in mind, if we are saying that the paranormal does not exist, it sounds foolish. Because if you are going to live as energy for a longer time, yes, so obviously I think the energy is going to sustain somewhere. It's not going to just dissipate.
So Neil, now again coming, making it a bit more horror centric and spooky. So please, you mentioned that while writing you saw that figure, in the hotel room. So are there any other real life stories that you have come across, maybe from your own experiences, or maybe that you have heard from other people?
There are multiple stories that I have come across, but one of the problems with me is that many of my stories are becoming parts of web series and all that.
Okay.
I'm not at liberty to disclose a lot of them. But okay, so let me think which I can safely share with you. So there was this
Sure.
there was this incident of one girl that she told me the story about. Like I routinely keep getting messages on Instagram about houses being haunted, things happening in the house. Like some girl told me that she was studying for her board exams, and she's 15-year-old. And in the house, she would always, like when she was studying for her exams, she would stay up in the middle of the night, till the middle of the night, till 3 a.m. to study. It was a habit because the house was like a big house, many people, lot of noise. So she would stay up in the night. Now this was a kind of a cantonment area, and there was like two malika buildings. These were the houses. One house and an upper story and an upper story. That's it. So now, when she, in her particular house, it was on rent. So the upper story was given to somebody else. And some other people, these people were also tenants. Somebody else was also tenant like that. So now, whenever this girl used to sit and study in the night, what used to happen is, firstly, she started hearing the sound of the tap being opened, which is very general. Tap being opened is a very general common sound. And she tried to see in her bathroom first because it sounded like that. Nobody had woken up. Then she assumed that it must be somebody in the upper story doing it, the other tenant. And she continued her study. Next day, the tap again opened at the same exact time. Right, that was around little bit before 3, I think 2:57 or something like that. The tap again opened. Then what happened is, slowly she started, I mean, of course, she started thinking like, what is it? Like, then somebody must be, like, it was actually the sound of somebody having bath. It was not the sound of just somebody going to the washroom and flush her sound, not like that. Like the shower is going on, and like who would have a bath at 3, right? At the shower at 3 o'clock. Anyway, then she started hearing sounds of these marbles, kanche. So it was also again coming from that upper house. And it was like kanche khelte hain. So there's a marble tuck, 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 tuck. That kind of sound. And this again started constantly coming at 3 o'clock. Now, one day, this girl, after like this, many things happened. Okay, many sounds started coming in regularly. So one day, this girl, she actually spoke to there was another girl in that house also, who was also studying for her other exams. So then she thought that maybe then one day, that when that other girl came, this our person asked her that ये क्या तुम लोग रात भर कहते रहते हो, मतलब कौन नहाने जाता है 3 बजे, कंचे कौन खेलता है रात को? हम तो कुछ भी नहीं कहते, हम तो सो जाते हैं 12 बजे से पहले. Like before midnight, everything is ended. We are asleep. Then the girl recorded the sounds on her phone, and it was there. So the sounds were there, and it was coming from that empty house, which was between the two houses. And it was coming from there, and nobody had opened the house in many years. When they opened it, and nothing was found, but these sounds became till the time that girl was there. She would hear those sounds, and then she moved out. After she moved out, she went back to the colony after a few years to just visit. And that ऊपर वाली house की जो girl थी, she also said कि अरे आप जाने के बाद तो बहुत कुछ होने लगा. हम ऐसे ही फिसल के गिर जाते थे, and ये होता था. And she actually, one of the girls fell and broke her leg and all that. And she said हमने छोड़ ही दिया बाद में. And now nobody stays in those 3 houses. So this is a story. Of course, I've modified a bit. Because this is being made into a kind of a show.
Right.
But yeah.
So talking about the the energies that you spoke about, again going back to that. So do you believe there are energies? पहले आपने बताया था कि these energies don't even have the power to lift a glass.
Yeah.
And so now we see, I mean, हम लोग देख रहे हैं कि बहुत सारी movies भी बन रही हैं इस पे, which speak about the rural practices in terms of calling out ghosts. I think आपने कई बार अपने कुछ इंटरव्यूज में बताया बाएंगी के बारे में, which is typically prevalent in the rural areas of Maharashtra.
Okay.
Right? And there are a lot of stories like that. जो भी movie भी आई कंटारा. Right. So are there these energies which can really harm people?
The whole
kill us probably.
See, the whole paranormal investigation world, जितने भी लोग हैं who are doing this paranormal investigation, nobody has an answer to why exorcism or possession takes place, and why exorcism, whether it helps or not. And possession is one thing which is a universal paranormal phenomenon. Whether you go in the US, or you go in the Middle East, or you come to India, or you go to Philippines, possessions happen everywhere. They have their own versions of it. And it happens across religions, across time. It has been happening, and we don't have a clue as to what this is. Of course, now modern science tells that it is a mental illness. It is some kind of mental illness. But if it is mental illness, then how do you explain the kind of stuff that you see in Kantara? Because in Kantara, what is shown is that there is this forest spirit which possesses that one person who is the chosen one. Okay, and
Right.
everyone can see that position. Everyone can see it that this guy has become different. Maybe a lot of it is just playing out, but for a few minutes, something suddenly does happen. Okay, we all know about jatras and all, right? Where the women get possessed by Mataji, the spirit. That kind of position is completely not explained. So all these things have no answer, like why it is happening. It is possible. See, I'm just giving a theory, okay? I'm just theorizing. The normal human ghosts and spirits, as I told you, cannot even lift a glass. That's true. That whatever the Hollywood and Bollywood shows us is just glorified version of God.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, it won't happen. But maybe possession comes from some other plane. Maybe it is something else. Because see, whenever we talk about possession, it's always about either a very holy possession or a very evil possession. Very holy position, we will say Mata aa gayi. We say like that. Or it is the forest spirit, as in Kantara, that has come in this man. So it is a god that has come. Now, God is actually what? A spirit that is much beyond our level of understanding. As we say, the holiest of holy, right? So somebody with a very, very pure, positive energy might be able to take over somebody else's conscience. That is one thing. Also, there were positions which are shown in the movies a lot. The negative side of it. That means the demons coming in. If you watch the movie Exorcist, it was a demon, right? Pazuzu. So it was a demon. And also these many of the other position movies, all of them, they are from the very evil. Now they are very evil, and therefore they can also have this conscience. Now this world we don't know. We don't know about this world of gods and demons. Though it's a lot of it is written in our Shastras and all that Puranas and all, that there are gods, there are demons. Dev Danav ka to chalta rehta hai. But we have not seen this. So is this nothing but we human beings being trapped in this tussle between Dev and Danav? Because we are between, right? We are between the two worlds. So is this happening because of that? I don't know. I don't have an answer. But it happens, and it is one of those things that actually nobody has an answer to. So we can just go on talking about it and conjecturing about it. There's no concrete thing to talk about.
So till now, Neil, I have been asking you all the questions. So let me just share you a couple of stories from my end also.
Okay.
So this is related to this possession that we are talking about. So for the sake of naming that person, and this actually is a known person to me, let's call him Ajay.
Okay.
Now, many people know. I mean, the people who are close to him, it's only a very handful of people that know. It is said, I have not seen it personally, but it is said that he is the chosen one in his village, rural area.
Okay.
He is the chosen one, and there is a specific day of the year when this happens, when he is possessed, and people actually worship him.
Okay.
They ask questions about their future or whatever their problems are, and he answers them. And
Okay.
that there is a window of, I think, 2-3 hours or whatever it is, 1 to 2 hours. After that, he has no recollection of anything.
Right. But even Kantara, the story that is set, it's from Tulunadu, right? North Kantara district. So that's my native. So I also come from there, right? So that is, I've heard of these things happening right from my childhood, that such things happen in the village side, in the forest side of it. And what you are saying about your friend also, that he gets this divine knowledge for some part, I've heard of that. So that does happen. I attest with that. Yeah.
Okay. Now, talking about the why this paranormal intrigues me. So, as I told you, I've been for to my whole life. There was this incident, probably 15 years back. Ghar, garden, and everything. So our ghar and our garden. So just adjacent to that, there was this house wherein there are like 3 brothers living with their families and all that. So one night, what happened? I mean, we were sleeping. It was almost, I think, 12:30, whatever it was. So someone rang our bell. We came out. So they called for help. The guy from there. कि आओ आओ प्लीज यहाँ पे there is something happening and we cannot explain what it is जब तक आप लोग देखोगे नहीं. And what we saw पहले तो see across India there are a lot of practices, and towards the east and the northeast part of the country there are in places like Assam,
Mayong.
Bengal predominantly the occult and the black practices they exist. So first expression was that, but it happened till the wee hours of not wee hours of the morning. I think it was almost 8:30 in the morning. Things falling suddenly, something coming out of uh, there is this there was this what do you call that, coconut nariyal, and we actually went into that puja room. We saw that eggs and onion kept on that puja stand.
Okay.
So they called up a small time tantric out there for doing that. And while he was trying to control that spirit, whatever it was, I don't know. Till date, we have no clarity around that. He actually said, "Ki I will not be able to do this. This is beyond me. This is beyond my powers." He left, and by 6:37 in the morning, this had gone out to. This had spread like anything. So lot of people came in. The people who try to be macho and all that. कुछ नहीं होता, तुम लोग ऐसा ही कर रहे हो. And trust me, एक दो लोग बोले तो हाँ ठीक है, कोई झूठ बोल सकता है. So our entire family there, their entire family is there, other people are there. So almost 40-50 people are there, and everyone is saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? Things. So one of them, there was this landline phones जो होते थे ना, तो वो रखा हुआ था. बोला कि कॉल करो उसको, बुलाओ कुछ, dial one phone number. While he was approaching the phone, something just suddenly flew across. I think it was a sleeper or something, hit in his face. He left. नहीं मैं नहीं जाऊँगा. So this happened till almost 8:30 in the morning. So people were gathered. So people started कि चाय बनाते हैं, चाय पीते हैं जब तक कुछ ठीक नहीं होता है. वो चाय बना रहे थे, सामने की बात है, because everyone was scared, like सब ना shit वाली हाल में थे. तो एक साथ 5-6 लोग किचन में जाके चाय बना रहे हैं. चाय में चीनी मिनी सब डाली, जैसे सर्व किया, इट्स completely salty. And this is because I have seen this, so somewhere or the other I believe कि कुछ तो है. I don't try to intrigue, poke it or provoke it, because I don't know if I'll be able to handle that.
That we should.
As of now, I don't do meditation, and I don't have those powers to control it. So some things are left untouched.
So a lot of
This
people
is
tell
one
me that
story.
you also don't provoke spirits a lot, because you write horror and you go in all these secluded places. That's dangerous. You should not do it. ऐसे कि चलो देखते हैं क्या होगा. These are the professional hazards.
And there are other stories that I've also heard. One of my chemistry teachers, he mentioned a story to me, because उनसे मैं एक बार ऐसी बात कर रहा था. In places like Bandhavgarh. Sorry, Bandhavgarh नहीं, Bhangarh. Sorry.
Bhangarh and Kuldhara, Rajasthan,
Right.
places. So yes, there was this story of an army guy. Share this as a last one because I'm sure we are running out of time. So
Sure, yeah.
He shared this story with me. So the army people are not supposed to share horror stories. So there was this kind of Himalayan posting that they had. Of course, it is the defense border, and they just had to keep watch throughout the night. So one of these young recruits at that time, he used to come and tell his superior officer कि रात को बहुत आवाजें आती from the valley side. So and they are inhuman, like growling sounds and this and that. So the superior officer says that these are the mountains. It's going to happen. You just get used to it. So he complained for about a month, and then one day suddenly that young guy disappeared. He was not there. Now the thing is, the superior officer then made a kind of to go and check like where he is, and because morning he didn't come to report that okay everything is done. So they went to check on the same area where he was posted, and he was not found. Then after a few days, the superior officer, whoever he was, he came alone again to check whether anything sign can be found or what and all that. And he actually saw that guy. That guy was little down on the valley. He was like stuck. So he went down, he pulled him up and all that. He brought him, and they were alone. These two were alone. And he actually gave him all that, whatever first aid he could, gave him the
Hmm.
tea. He was not hurt. The funny thing was, he had fallen down, but he had got stuck on a branch and he stayed there for like 3 days or whatever. And he gave him the tea and all. And then he said, Ki, I will go back to the cantonment and I will get whatever you need, like, because first aid and doctors and all will have to be called. So he went and he came back. And by this time, this guy, he made him sit on the top of that mountain, not on the valley side. He went, and when he came back with the doctor and other people, this guy was not there. And they again did a search, and somehow the superior officer, he just felt that let us look at him in the same branches where I had found him. And they saw, and there is dead body. So actually, the thing is that person had fallen there, and he had died 3 days ago. He had died and he was there only. And what the superior officer actually saw, usko utha ke laya and upar and all, that was not the real person. That was not him. Because that guy was there since 3 days continuously. So his spirit. So it is somehow the people believe that because his body was not being found, he himself came to show where his body was.
Right.
So these kinds of stories are very common in the army because you know what happens? There it is mountains. It is completely isolated, completely away from the human civilization and away from sophistication, modern technology, everything. So that is why on the mountains you get more horror stories.
Neil, I don't know if I should thank you because I'm not going to have a sleep tonight. But
Especially when you're editing.
and thank you for that. And I think that was the whole purpose of this podcast, that we need to give at least one sleepless night to everyone, all the listeners. And that is the whole purpose of doing a horror podcast. Neil, thank you so much for your time and sharing all these insights. uh, I know there were several things that you could not share because of the upcoming your web series and the books, and we congratulate you for that and all the best for that. And we hope to have you very soon on the iRonik show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Neil.
You have been a great host, not just asking questions but also sharing your experiences, which makes it
Right.
more fun and interesting.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hope this episode is very well received by your audience and
I hope
all the
so,
best
and
to
I'm
all.
pretty sure.
Yes, may all positive energies always come in your life and the negative energies keep away. Thanks.
Same to you, Neil, and thank you so much. Thank you.